This is channel Xianxia Audio. Please support me a subscription. This is the series I'm Not a Theater God. Chapter 111. Enforcement officers are nothing special. Cold Rain Street. Mom. A blood-stained girl, leaning against the wall, slowly moved forward. Her left leg was unnaturally twisted, and her eyes scanned the dead silent thick fog. Her face filled with fear and despair. A strange shriek sounded from the front of the street, and the girl's face immediately turned pale. She huddled against the wall, her body trembling uncontrollably. Just then, a hand gently patted her shoulder. The girl gasped, instinctively shrinking forward. She fearfully looked up, only to find that it wasn't a monster behind her, but a young man in a black windbreaker. "Little one, what's wrong?" Xianxia forced a gentle smile onto his pale face. Perhaps because of that smile, some of the fear on the girl's face dissipated, and she whispered, I got separated from my mom." Xianxia looked around. On the misty street, there wasn't a single person to be seen. "When did you get separated?" "Just now." "Which way did she go?" The girl extended her hand, pointing to the empty street ahead. Xianxia sighed, bent down. "I'll take you to find her. Okay?" The girl nodded. Xianxia carried her on his back, one hand gripping a blood-stained steel sword, and stumbled into the thick fog. After several hours of searching and fighting, Xianxia's body was already nearing its limit. But he couldn't rest yet. With Han Meng gone, he was the pillar of the 3rd district. He absolutely couldn't fall before all the streets were cleared. Xianxia slowly walked forward with the girl on his back. The storefronts on both sides of the street were covered in blood, and incomplete corpses lay exposed in the air, their blood already dried. "What's your name?" Xianxia suddenly asked. Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi, close your eyes for now. When I find your mom, you can open them, okay? Okay. The girl obediently closed her eyes. Xianxia walked through the dead silent street for more than 10 minutes when a series of noises came from afar. There were still people. Xianxia immediately quickened his pace. As he got closer to the noise, he saw a group of people gathered around a bloody, mangled body in a house at the street corner, discussing something anxiously. "I told you he can't be saved. Let's go." "Yes, if we don't leave now, those things will chase us again." "But he's still alive. We can't just leave him here. He just saved our lives." "I think it's more dangerous to run outside. Maybe hiding in the house is the safest." Quote. There were about 6 or 7 people in the house, all covered in dust and blood, as if they had fled from other streets. 2 or 3 of them were currently gathered around a severely injured man, urgently bandaging him. Hearing their voices, Xiaoqi, who was sitting on Xianxia's back, suddenly opened her eyes and shouted in surprise, "Mom!" Everyone in the house turned their heads simultaneously. They saw Xianxia in his black windbreaker outside the door and froze. Then, a middle-aged woman among them suddenly stood up and anxiously ran towards the doorway. "Xiaoqi, where did you run off to? Mom has been looking for you for so." "Stop." Xianxia's low roar suddenly rang out. This shout directly startled everyone in the house. The middle-aged woman, who was halfway to the door, also stopped in place, looking at him with confusion. Xianxia grabbed Xiaoqi's arm as she was about to jump off his back. Protecting her as he slowly retreated, he tightly gripped his steel sword, his gaze fixed on the people inside the house. Enveloped in the thick fog, their shadows writhed in the darkness. These people had all been targeted by the calamity. "Mom!" Xiaoqi reached out towards her mother, but could only get further and further away from her. Her eyes were filled with confusion. "Enforcement officer, what is the meaning of this?" The middle-aged woman frowned, anxiously wanting to retrieve her child. But Xianxia instead opened the door of the opposite house, pushed the little girl inside, and locked the door. "Mom!" Swoosh! As the middle-aged woman took half a step out of the door, streaks of black shadows suddenly erupted from inside the house, instantly pouncing on the nearby figures in the narrow space. In an instant, screams and the sounds of flesh tearing wildly intertwined. Seeing this, Xianxia's eyes turned bloodshot. His body was stained with a black hue, like steel armor. He gripped his steel sword and rushed into the house without hesitation. He tried to save the middle-aged woman closest to him, but by the time he brought his sword down on a shadow centipede, most of the woman's head had already been bitten off. even though Xianxia severely wounded the shadow centipede with a single slash. He could no longer save her life. The bloody massacre was completed in an instant. All the centipedes rapidly crawled along the walls, completely sealing off the doorway. The figure in the black windbreaker was trapped in the narrow room, surrounded by crawling centipede legs from all directions. Xianxia tightly gripped the hilt of his steel sword, took a deep breath, and the blade was stained with the same black color as his body, a cold aura emanating around him. After such a long period of fighting, his stamina had long since reached its limit, but given the situation, he absolutely could not retreat. 8 shadow centipedes, close at hand, simultaneously erupted. In that instant, Xianxia's steel sword traced an arc around him, and an extremely fine black line swept out from the tip of the blade, cleaving the 3 closest centipedes in half with one stroke. Xianxia was about to dodge, but 2 centipedes had already bitten into his shoulder. At such close range, he had no room to evade whatsoever. At the same time, the other centipedes swarmed him, enveloping him like a writhing black ball. They bit at Xianxia's body, even though most of his skin was covered in black, hard as steel. Small areas were still gnawed at, and crimson blood stained his windbreaker. Xianxia's eyes were wide and bloodshot. Just as he was preparing to fight to the death, a figure, like a dancing red butterfly, lightly landed outside the door. At this moment, all the shadow centipedes stopped moving. They simultaneously turned their heads to look outside. In the surging thick fog, a figure, holding seasoning in his left hand and a blazing torch in his right, was squinting at the room. "Who?" Xianxia instinctively asked. Qianling casually twirled the torch in his hand like a sword flower, and chuckled. "Enforcement officers are nothing special." As his words fell, he flashed and disappeared outside the door. At the same time, the shadow centipedes clinging to Xianxia went mad, scrambling out of the room through the doors and windows, chasing after the rapidly moving trail of fire. Chapter 112. Roasted Chicken Feast. In the blood-stained room filled with corpses, only Xianxia remained standing. He stood dazed for a while, then endured the pain and quickly ran out the door, only to see that in the misty fog, the red-clothed figure had already moved so far away that it was almost imperceptible. Several shadow centipedes scurried rapidly behind him, also turning into small black dots and disappearing without a trace. Who is he? At this moment, Xianxia's heart was filled with this question. It was a face he had never seen before, indifferent, stern, seemingly even younger than him. Judging from his attire and the phrase, "enforcement officer," is nothing more than this. He certainly wasn't someone sent by Aurora City. Could it be that he is from outside the Aurora domain? But why did he save him? And how did he lure those centipedes away? Just as Xianxia was wondering, several more black afterimages swiftly darted out from the surrounding rooftops. 1, 2, 3, 11, 12. A total of 13 shadow centipedes ignored Xianxia on the ground and pursued the red-clothed figure from all directions. Qianling looked around, finding no one, and stabbed himself 3 times in the abdomen. The injuries and pain transformed into power, causing Qianling's speed to surge again. This allowed him to barely pull away from the frantically surging shadow centipedes around him. Fortunately, the blood from the wounds was almost the same color as the red opera robe, so if one didn't look closely, it was impossible to tell. To ensure he wasn't caught while attracting all the nearby shadow centipedes, Qianling had pushed his speed to the limit. As the scarlet figure swept across the rooftops, the howling wind brushed past the edge of the street. Several figures, fleeing in a panic, simultaneously stopped. "Did you guys see something pass by just now? Seems like it. Was it red? How come I didn't see anything? Are you guys seeing things? Who cares? Escaping is the priority." As they spoke, they were about to continue moving forward when the thick fog ahead suddenly surged, and dense black shadows rapidly crawled out from within. Seeing the shadow centipedes rushing towards them, the few people were so frightened they almost fainted, their legs giving out as they uniformly knelt on the ground. Just as they closed their eyes and cried out, preparing to embrace death, the black shadows directly swept past them and sped away into the distance. The few people opened their eyes, still shaken, and before they could react to what had happened, their shadows beside them violently twisted. Several centipedes crawled out of their shadows, almost brushing their faces, hissing and also pursuing into the distance. In their frantic escape, they hadn't realized when these things had hidden beside them. And the same scene was playing out on several surrounding streets. The light from the blazing torches was strong enough for the shadow centipedes in 3 nearby streets to see Chen Ling's path simultaneously. Rushing this way, he conservatively estimated that he had attracted over 30 calamities. As for whether there were any other calamities surviving on other streets, Chen Ling couldn't care less. He wasn't a god, nor was he a savior. Saving so many people was already the limit of what he could do. The red afterimage sprinted towards the edge of the district. Chen Ling searched his memory for the path he had already rehearsed, and quickly locked his gaze on a 3 or 4-story warehouse in the wilderness. Chen Ling rushed to the warehouse door, opened it with a key, and slipped inside. After a brief silence, dense shadow centipedes followed closely. Arriving in the wilderness, they circled the outside of the warehouse for a moment, then swarmed in through the main door. The warehouse interior was dark and unlit. With no lights on, these shadows burrowed into every corner, searching for traces of Chen Ling, but found nothing. Just as they were about to leave, the heavy door slowly closed. Clack. 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 In the darkness, a faint spark of fire lit up, illuminating half of Chen Ling's smiling face. All the shadow centipedes crawling inside the warehouse simultaneously turned to look. The firelight illuminated Chen Ling's face, and also cast a rice grain-sized reflection in the gasoline and alcohol flowing on the ground. Dense chickens roared and rushed towards him, but Chen Ling unhurriedly took out cooking wine from a plastic bag, unscrewed the cap, and then poured it gurgling onto the ground. No one can see me here, and no one will disturb me. In the flickering firelight, Chen Ling's smile grew even brighter. He licked his lips. Let's see if you get roasted first, or if I get burned to death first. The lighter in his hand spun lightly and fell to the ground. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +5 close black lens bracket. Boom. Blazing flames instantly spread like a red carpet across the warehouse. The firelight illuminated every corner, and dozens of chickens shrieked sharply under the scorching heat of the flames, as if they would rip off the roof. Chen Ling's body was also licked by the flames, his skin visibly charring, yet he seemed completely oblivious to the pain. With one hand, he held ginger and garlic, and with the other, he carried green onions, crashing into the chicken flock, which scattered like headless flies. The entire warehouse was like a frying pan. A rich aroma of meat began to spread throughout the warehouse. In this human purgatory, numerous calamities shrieked in agony, while only one red-clothed figure grew increasingly excited. Fragrant. So fragrant. Chen Ling rushed to the most evenly roasted chicken, tore off a drumstick, first bit into a charred green onion, then fiercely bit into the chicken meat, and the intoxicating aroma cleansed his body. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket current expectation, 68% close black lens bracket. Chen Ling's hands were burned beyond human recognition, yet it didn't affect his eating in the slightest. Under the vigorous vitality brought by the blood clothes, he endured the high temperature and weaved through the roasted chicken flock, like an elegant diner at a fiery feast. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket audience expectation, close black lens bracket. Pairs of scarlet eyes reappeared behind Chen Ling. They were shadows sitting in nothingness, very similar to the frantically scurrying shadow centipedes in the warehouse. The only difference was that the shadows behind Chen Ling were human, while they were insects. The moment the audience's gazes appeared, the frantically wriggling shadow centipedes suddenly trembled. They looked in this direction with terror. Their bodies, licked by the flames, no longer moved an inch. They gave up resistance, gave up struggling, and quietly curled up amidst the blazing flames, allowing their bodies to be roasted into fragrant, cooked meat. So fragrant, so fragrant. Chen Ling, weaving through the roasted chicken flock, had that eerie red glow reappear in his eyes. He laughed as he tore and bit into these quiet chicken meats, his body surface completely charred by the flames. Black body, scarlet eyes. From afar, he seemed to have become one of the audience. In the blazing warehouse, innumerable strange rubbing sounds emanated from the orifices of these roasted chickens. They overlapped, as if chanting the revered name of a certain existence. Scarlet Monarch of the Ghostly Abyss. King of Facelessness who mocks fate. Scarlet Monarch of the Ghostly Abyss. King of Facelessness who mocks fate. Ghostly Abysses. Chapter 113, Advancement. Factory Area. A black afterimage, like lightning, tore through the factory roof, whistling as it was swallowed by the surging thick fog. Immediately after, a crawling shadow centipede emerged from the hole in the factory roof, coiling and intertwining with nothingness, spiraling skyward in pursuit. A dark red aperture squirmed at the centipede's head. The next moment, countless shadows, like growing branches, drilled out from this aperture, grasping at Han Meng's body from all directions. Han Meng's black trench coat was covered in blood. He frowned as he looked at the giant shadow rapidly pursuing him, his right hand gripping his gun and continuously pulling the trigger. Deconstructing bullets rained down, destroying the surging shadows one after another. Han Meng could feel his mental energy being consumed rapidly. At the same time, the court of judgment also expanded to its limit. This was not Han Meng's first time challenging an opponent of a higher tier. Compared to his last fight against the red paper monster, dealing with this shadow centipede was noticeably less strenuous. This wasn't to say the shadow centipede's combat power was weak, but rather Han Meng felt that the red paper monster was more insidious. The power of judgment continuously tore apart the shadows in midair. Han Meng's figure moved through them precariously, constantly gaining altitude. However, when his height exceeded a certain threshold, the black giant shadow gave up its pursuit, turned, and retreated back into the scarred steel factory. It absolutely refuses to leave the steel factory, does it? Han Meng stopped in midair, lost in thought. With the continuous fighting, they had almost leveled the entire steel factory. As an enforcement officer of the 3rd District, Han Meng naturally did not want to see such losses occur. So from the beginning, he had been trying to lure this mother away from the factory area. But no matter which direction he tried to lure it from, as long as it went beyond a certain range of the steel factory, the mother would automatically give up its pursuit and return to the steel factory, as if it had completely designated this place as its nest. The more this happened, the more difficult it became for Han Meng to solve the current trouble in the 3rd District. He had to kill this mother. But with so many centipedes gathered inside the factory, and the terrain being narrow, trying to kill a 5th-tier creature as a 4th tier was almost impossible. This was also why the two had been entangled in a fight for so long. Just as Han Meng was pondering a way to break the deadlock, an anomaly suddenly occurred. The hundreds of shadow centipedes squirming within the factory area simultaneously shuddered, their heads turning towards a certain direction in the thick fog. Their dark red apertures violently contracted, whether in fear or excitement. It was unclear. Han Meng looked in the direction they were staring, but he could see nothing but a dense fog. Han Meng's brows furrowed slightly, just as he was feeling puzzled. The mother, which was entrenched deep inside the factory, plunged madly into the deepest part of the factory, its figure gradually disappearing underground. The other shadow centipedes rapidly gathered, following it and converging towards the giant pit, like a black tide being drawn into a whirlpool. Seeing this, Han Meng immediately transformed into an afterimage and pursued them. He broke into the factory. The centipedes, which had previously been full of murderous intent towards him, now seemed not to see him at all, rushing one after another into the ground. Han Meng followed their trajectory and stopped in a corner of the workshop. Before him was a giant pit several meters in radius. The edge of the pit was ash-like ground, as if stained by something. A gray realm intersection point? Han Meng's brows furrowed even tighter. As far as he knew, even if the Aurora domain encountered a gray realm intersection, the intersection point would at most last for half an hour before automatically healing. But this time, several hours had passed, and this intersection point was still there? As the numerous centipedes disappeared, Han Meng's heart did not relax. Instead, he became even more vigilant. As long as this intersection point still existed, those calamities could still appear. Even if not centipedes, there would likely be other calamities from the Grey Realm. Moreover, Han Meng clearly felt that this Grey Realm intersection was not right. He stood at the entrance of the cave, hesitating for a moment, but a look of determination flashed in his eyes. He lightly leapt, and with the black tide, disappeared into the grey depths of the pit. Ellipsis ellipsis. So fragrant, so fragrant. The warehouse under the fierce fire was like a scorching alchemical furnace. Countless curled shadows silently burned within it. A figure, completely charred, with limbs like burnt matches, was sprawled on a shadow, frantically tearing at its flesh and blood. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +1 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, close black lens bracket. As Chen Ling ate one shadow after another, the scarlet in those eyes in the void grew even more vivid. Dozens of shadow centipedes were burned to death in the fierce fire. Their flesh and blood became Chen Ling's meal. Their spirits were swallowed into nothingness, leaving behind only puppet-like corpses, respectfully curled up on the ground. After an unknown period of time, Chen Ling's eyes had been burned blind. He fumbled for a moment on the charred roasted chicken, but couldn't grab a piece of meat. He could only grope in the darkness, stumbling towards the side. However, as soon as he took a step, his left leg shattered into charcoal, and he fell to the ground. This fall shattered his right hand, chest, and shoulder even further. He lay stiffly in the flames, like a dried corpse about to meet its demise. Am I going to die? Even the blood clothes couldn't sustain Chen Ling's prolonged survival in the fierce fire. His vitality, along with most of the shadow centipedes, was nearing its end. The oxygen in the warehouse was rapidly consumed, and an unprecedented sense of suffocation surged into Chen Ling's heart. He still tried to crawl up and grab the roasted chickens around him. But after struggling for a long time, he could only sway slightly in place. Finally, he lay there motionless, as if he had completely resigned himself to fate. Those pairs of scarlet eyes in the fierce fire silently peered at all of this. The flames completely consumed the last of the air, gradually extinguishing in the warehouse, leaving only faint flickers of fire silently dancing near the door crack. Open black lens bracket lost actor connection detected. Performance interrupted close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket audience expectation -50 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket current expectation 28% close black lens bracket. A few lines of charred characters flashed across the ground of corpses. A moment later, a strange red light extended from beneath Chen Ling's body, like intertwined steps, stretching all the way to the end of nothingness. Above the sky outside the warehouse, a vermilion star flickered slightly, and surging mental energy surged out from Chen Ling's corpse. He seemed to have broken through a certain barrier, his aura rising steadily, finally settling on the second step of that twisted divine path, then slowly disappearing into nothingness. In the darkness, the human-shaped charred corpse suddenly rapidly regained vitality. Flesh and blood regenerated on the black charcoal, and the dried eyeballs re-nurtured their luster, as if something was about to break out of this withered corpse like a cocoon. His fingers curled slightly, and as his eyelids opened, a pair of hollow, eerie eyes were exposed to the air. He slowly got up, his red opera robe spotless. The next moment, an eerie and chilling laugh echoed through the deathly silent warehouse. Chapter 114. Skill out of control. Thick fog silently churned, and in the dead silent street, several figures in black and red uniforms hurried over. Chief Shi, they immediately called out when they saw Shi Renji standing alone in the middle of the street. Shi Renji turned his head to look. Most of these people were covered in dust and bloodstains, looking very disheveled. A few of them were notably clean, they hid behind the others, lowering their heads, not daring to meet Shi Renji's gaze. With just a glance, Shi Renji could distinguish which enforcers had exerted effort and which enforcers were slacking off. Or to put it more harshly, were just trying to survive. But at this moment, Shi Renji had no time to settle scores with them and directly asked, "What's the situation with you all?" "Chief Shi, the disasters in the surrounding streets have all run off." A red shadow flew past. And then those disasters seemed to go crazy, all chasing after it. "Same for us." Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote. The blood-stained enforcers standing at the front recounted everything that had just happened. Shi Renji looked in the direction where the red shadow had vanished into the thick fog, and the confusion in his eyes deepened. Just then, he seemed to discover something and bent down into a squat. Along the path where the disasters had crawled, bloodstains left faint long marks on the ground, like traces left by a shadow centipede after devouring someone. These marks intertwined, extending towards a certain direction deep within the thick fog. The others also saw these bloodstains. The leading enforcers hesitated for a moment, then tentatively asked, "Chief Xi, should we pursue?" These bloodstains were all left by shadow centipedes, and the shadow centipedes had all gone after that red shadow. Following these traces might lead them to them, but what would happen once they found them? Who could guess? Not to mention dozens of disasters. It was impossible to tell whether that mysterious red shadow was friend or foe. So, in the minds of most enforcers at the moment, they were praying not to pursue, as no one wished to put themselves in danger. Unfortunately, Shi Renji nodded with almost no hesitation. Pursue. Shi Renji's gaze swept over everyone, and he casually pointed to a few enforcers with the heaviest bloodstains who looked the bravest. "You follow me, the others stay and clear the battlefield." Hearing the latter half of the sentence, the enforcers hiding behind the others finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Mommy, mommy." At the same time, Xiao Qi's cries came from a nearby house. Shi Renji came back to his senses, his eyes filled with complexity. Before the massacre just now, he had locked Xiao Qi in the house, so she hadn't seen the bloody scene. At this moment, the child still didn't know that her mother had just been torn to pieces by a shadow centipede right in front of her. "Chief Shi, this is..." Confusion appeared in the eyes of several enforcers. Shi Renji took a deep look at the room where the disasters had massacred, then turned and walked directly into the thick fog. "Burn those corpses in the house. At least, don't let the child see her mother's appearance." The remaining enforcers exchanged glances, not daring to delay any longer, and followed Shi Renji's instructions. A few minutes later, flames ignited from the house littered with corpses. Shi Renji's figure moved through the thick fog, followed closely by 7 or 8 enforcers. They tracked the marks left by the crawling shadow centipedes, moving towards the edge of the district. "Chief Shi, are your injuries all right?" "They're fine." Shi Renji shook his head. At this moment, his attention was entirely focused on the mysterious red shadow. He repeatedly recalled the scene just now in his mind. Although the person appeared for only a few seconds, the impression he left was too deep. Whether it was the vivid red clothes, the way he led away the disasters, or his disdain for the enforcement officers. But what puzzled Shi Renji the most was the scallions, ginger, and garlic the other party was carrying. What was his intention in carrying those items? To say he was just an unnamed hero who happened to encounter a Grey Realm convergence on his way home from buying groceries after work and lend a hand. Shi Renji didn't believe it. He was past that naive age. The other party's actions must have had their own intentions, perhaps related to this Grey Realm convergence? If it's a strong individual from another realm, is it the Zhangtian sect? Or the Twilight Society? At least for now, it doesn't seem like the fire usurpers. As Shi Renji pondered, his figure had already tracked to a desolate area. He sniffed lightly, stopping with a strange expression. The several enforcers behind him also stopped. "Do you smell a foul odor?" Shi Renji suddenly asked. "Foul odor?" Several enforcers exchanged glances and nodded. "It does seem so. It's like the smell of burnt plastic. There was only a little just now, but the further we go in, the stronger the smell seems to get. Cough, cough, cough. It stinks so much. Is it my imagination? Why do I feel like there's a hint of vegetable fragrance mixed in with this stench?" Everyone was extremely perplexed, but this still didn't stop their progress. They slowly moved forward along the bloodstains on the ground. In the hazy mist, a warehouse billowing with black smoke appeared in their sight. And that strong foul odor came from this warehouse. The traces of the disasters disappear here. Shi Renji gazed at the warehouse, his expression somewhat serious. "They are most likely inside. I know this place. It's a wine cellar. I've tasted their wine. It's pretty good," an enforcer immediately said. "Open the door." At Shi Renji's command, several enforcers immediately stepped forward, but as soon as their hands grasped the warehouse door handle, they recoiled sharply, shaking them in the air continuously. "This door is so hot." Shi Renji frowned slightly. He unstrapped his steel sword from his back and calmly said, "Everyone, step back." Seeing this, everyone unhesitatingly hid behind Shi Renji. The latter took a deep breath, and black aura once again climbed onto the sword. He suddenly swung his sword towards the massive warehouse door in front of him. Boom! Black threads trailed as the sword tip sliced through the doorway, which immediately split into several pieces and collapsed with a crash. Before everyone could see the scene inside, the outside air rushed into the warehouse. and the remaining silently flickering flames in the corner reignited, erupting with fierce fire that surged out wildly, like a pair of flaming hands crawling out of the charred warehouse door. Fortunately, Xianxia and the others stood far back and were not caught in the flames. Even so, they were forced to retreat repeatedly by the heatwave. They looked in horror at the fire-engulfed warehouse, having no idea what was happening inside. Rustle. Rustle. Faint footsteps came from deep within the warehouse. Amidst the wildly dancing flames, a figure draped in a red opera robe emerged, his charred face gradually repairing itself, transforming into that cold and unfamiliar face. His hollow eyes were eerily sinister, exactly as Chen Ling's were when he first mastered open black lens bracket formless close black lens bracket. As he stepped onto the second step, the skill of this twisted divine path once again went out of control. Chapter 115 Scarlet Trick. For some reason, Xianxia's heart sank the moment he saw those empty eyes. In the warehouse, an enforcer shouted, and everyone's gaze simultaneously fell to the depths of the warehouse behind the red-robed figure. An extremely strong stench of acid poured out of the warehouse. In the burning sea of fire, countless charred centipedes lay curled on the ground. Their bodies were tattered, covered in bite marks and scattered limb fragments, resembling a meticulously arranged Shira purgatory. Whether due to the visual impact or the acidic stench, several enforcers felt their stomachs violently convulse and dry heaved on the spot. All dead? Xianxia looked at the ground full of disaster corpses in the warehouse, his mind greatly shaken. It had only been a little over 10 minutes since that person led these disasters away. Yet they were all annihilated? And looking at the corpses, there seemed to be bite marks. Xianxia's gaze returned to the figure draped in the red opera robe. His eyes filled with vigilance. Who are you? He stared at the red opera robe, asking in a deep voice. The figure did not speak, merely walked forward in silence, like a soulless husk. Suddenly, a gentle breeze swept across the wilderness. The red opera robe swayed lightly with the wind, and a scarlet butterfly flew out from his sleeve, gracefully floating past everyone's eyes. Everyone froze in place. This butterfly had no patterns, not even any organs or limbs a butterfly should possess. It was like a replica made of red paper, its wings gently flapping, scarlet as blood. Following that, it was the second, the third, the fourth. As his sleeve gently waved, dense swarms of butterflies poured out from beneath his theater gown, like a tide of dancing butterflies, overwhelmingly surging towards the faces of Xianxia and the others. Xianxia and the others were startled, instinctively raising their hands to shield themselves. Through the gaps in his fingers, he could see that the red opera robe had almost completely disintegrated into a sky full of red butterflies, completely obscuring their vision. Everything around them was a blur of scarlet. Where did all these butterflies come from? An enforcer, unable to open his eyes due to the butterflies, pulled out the gun from his waist in a panic. Bang, bang, bang. Consecutive gunshots rang out but failed to disperse the butterflies in the slightest. At the same time, Xianxia's angry shout suddenly rang out. Idiot, who told you to shoot? Although the red-robed figure was mysterious, he had, after all, saved his life and led away all the disasters from the 3rd district. Even if Xianxia had doubts about his identity, it didn't mean they were necessarily enemies. This was why Xianxia hadn't drawn his gun or held his sword in front of Chen Ling until now. But now that this enforcer had fired first, if that person took it as a signal to start a fight, it would be terrible. The enforcer who fired the gun was stunned. Before he could react, a red-robed figure rapidly coalesced from the sky full of red butterflies in front of him. Those empty eyes stared at him, chilling and eerie. He was startled by this scene and cried out, instinctively wanting to raise his gun again. But as the red-robed figure waved his sleeve, the gun in his hand suddenly became lighter. When he fully raised his hand, a fresh banana was clutched tightly in his palm, pointed at Chen Ling's brow. A banana? The enforcer was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the object in his hand, his brain instantly crashing. Before he could recover, the vermilion sleeve once again swept up. The red butterflies around him immediately twisted, transforming into long, slender snakes that coiled around his body like ropes. Black forked tongues flickered across his cheek, icy cold. This bizarre transformation directly shattered the enforcer's psychological defense. He screamed in terror, trying to break free from these slender snakes and escape. But no matter how hard he struggled, These slender snakes seemed to be growing on him. Impossible to shake off. Ah, help me, help me. Amidst his cries for help, Xianxia gritted his teeth, drew the steel sword from his back, and rushed forward, cleaving through the slender snakes on his body with one strike. The slender snakes snapped in response, leaving the surface of the enforcer's skin and revealing his bare upper body. At this moment, both the enforcer and Xianxia were stunned. They rubbed their eyes, unsure if the clothes had turned into slender snakes, or if the slender snakes had turned into clothes. Is it an illusion? A ghostly red-robed figure appeared behind Xianxia. Xianxia felt the hairs on his body stand on end, a chill rushing straight to his head. He unhesitatingly turned and swung his sword. The sword tore through the air, emitting a sharp screech, but as his vision blurred, the steel sword instantly turned into a charred black wooden stick, swinging towards Qianling's head. At this moment, Xianxia was startled, but having just experienced cutting through the slender snakes, he told himself that this was merely an illusion, and the weapon in his hand was still an indestructible steel sword. He gripped the bottom of the wooden stick firmly and swung it with a whoosh. Crack! The wooden stick snapped in response. Xianxia was stunned. He held the broken, charred stick, a hint of bewilderment flashing in his eyes, because he saw that what Qianling used to block his blow was precisely the steel sword he had originally held. Like that enforcer, his brain instantly crashed. That's not right. Those red butterflies and slender snakes from before, shouldn't they all have been illusions? Just as Xianxia thought all of this was real, reality turned to illusion, and when he believed these were illusions, the illusions became real again. For a moment, he couldn't distinguish what was real and what was fake. The only constant was the bizarre and chilling smile on the face of the red-robed figure in front of him. The steel sword whistled down, narrowly dodged by Xianxia. He gritted his teeth, pulled out a gun from his embrace, aimed it at Qianling, closed his eyes, and pulled the trigger. No gunshot rang out. A smooth sensation came from his fingertips. Xianxia opened his eyes blankly. At some point, the gun in his hand had turned into a banana. This is impossible. Xianxia's mind was blank. This is clearly real. No, is it fake? At the same time, he saw Qianling opposite him, slowly raising a banana towards him. Bang, bang, bang. 3 consecutive bullets struck Xianxia's body, although they were all neutralized by the black iron armor. At this moment, Xianxia felt his brain had died. This was simply unwinnable. He didn't understand the principle behind this absurd battle. In his mind, besides endless scarlet, there was only Qianling's eerie face. When the false is taken for true, the true is also false. When the true is taken for false, the false is also true. It seemed as if everything was born from the waving of that theater gown. Scarlet Trick. Chapter 116 Gray. Xianxia's body crashed heavily to the ground. The figure opposite, steel sword in hand, slowly walked towards him. At the same time, the steel sword in his hand continuously changed, transforming into a broom, a torch, a tentacle, a toilet plunger. These were bizarre objects, wildly alternating like a malfunctioning TV screen, dazzling to the eyes. Before Xianxia could stand up, the red specter suddenly flashed in front of him, raising the shifting sword high and stabbing down fiercely. Clang! The cane scraped against the iron armor, emitting blinding sparks. Terrifying power transferred from Qianling's hands to the fishing rod, slowly piercing through the surface of Xianxia's skin. The latter was pinned to the ground, all his strength used to gather the iron armor to resist the tennis racket. Even so, his face visibly paled. Just then, the ground beneath everyone's feet suddenly shook. Qianling tilted his head slightly, his hollow eyes turning to look at the charred warehouse. On the surface of the deepest wall, a hint of gray gradually spread from nothingness. He released the steel sword in his hand and turned to leave. The countless red paper butterflies gradually converged, rolling back into his wide sleeves. Chief Xi, are you all right? Several enforcers who were still standing immediately dropped the bananas in their hands and rushed over. Having narrowly escaped death, Xianxia gasped. He pulled out the sword blade that had embedded several centimeters into his chest. Blood spread along his clothes. If it had gone in a little deeper, his heart would likely have been pierced. I'm fine. Xianxia stood up with the help of the others, his eyes filled with dread as he looked at the departing red-clad figure. Although the battle just now was brief, The impact it had on them was too great. They had never heard of any divine path possessing such strange abilities. And the opponent had only used this one ability from beginning to end. Xianxia could tell that the opponent actually didn't have much killing intent. Otherwise, within 30 seconds, he could have killed everyone here. He just left like that? Wait, why is he going back to the warehouse? Isn't that a dead end? Gray Realm Convergence. It's Gray Realm Convergence. Someone with sharp eyes saw the hint of gray in the depths of the warehouse and immediately exclaimed. Xianxia's heart sank. Didn't they say the Gray Realm Convergence point was at the steel factory? Why is there another convergence point here? At the same time, Gray Realm Convergence appearing in two places. This situation shouldn't be possible within the Aurora domain. The red-clad figure passed through the charred centipede corpses, stopped in front of the wall stained with gray, then slowly raised his hand and pressed it against the wall. As a ripple spread across the wall, he stepped into it, his figure completely disappearing. He entered the Gray Realm. Xianxia said slowly. A human entering the Gray Realm? Isn't he afraid of death? An enforcer's face was full of shock. The Gray Realm is the territory of those disasters. If a human goes in, they will be discovered and attacked immediately. Moreover, the Gray Realm Convergence entrance and exit are unstable. What if the entrance and exit disappear midway? That's not something we should worry about. Xianxia shook his head. Since the red-clad figure was not an enforcement officer, they naturally couldn't control where he went. Besides, they couldn't control him anyway. The opponent's strength was unfathomable. Instead of worrying about others, they should worry about the third district itself. Xianxia's gaze fell to the side, where numerous bananas scattered on the ground transformed back into guns under his gaze. This time, Xianxia still couldn't see how they changed. Who exactly is this guy? Xianxia muttered to himself. ... So this is the Gray Realm. After a slight dizzying sensation, Han Meng's feet landed steadily on the black ground. He looked around, the gray-black sky pressed down like heavy lead. In the distance were jagged, dark mountains, and some strange buildings whose purpose was unclear, haphazardly embedded throughout the land. The place where he had just landed was a gray vortex in the void above his head. Han Meng looked down. His body seemed to have a filter applied. His black trench coat remained unchanged, but other colors were removed. The red lines on the edge of his shirt, the dark brown of his shoes, and even the silver patterns on the tail of his trench coat were all reduced to a monotonous gray. This world seemed to only accommodate black, gray, and white, with no other colors existing. This was Han Meng's first time entering the Gray Realm. Although he had long heard some legends about the Gray Realm, it wasn't until he personally stood in this world that he could truly experience that ethereal, distant, otherworldly feeling. This place was completely different from the human realm. Han Meng glanced at the shadow centipedes scurrying rapidly in a certain direction on the black ground, then took flight again, closely pursuing them. As Han Meng's figure gradually ascended, his vision became wider. He could see the continuous mountain ranges in the distance, and the faintly swaying giant shadows on the mountains. But what concerned Han Meng even more were the nascent vortexes forming around him. These nascent vortexes were still quite small compared to the pit where Han Meng had landed, but they were steadily expanding. Given more time, they should fully form. Each nascent vortex here was a nascent convergence point between the two realms. How is this possible? Han Meng's heart sank as he looked at the dense cluster of nascent convergence points. One must know that Han Meng entered the Gray Realm from the factory area of the 3rd district, and the space corresponding to this place was the 3rd district and even the surrounding several large districts. If such a large-scale Gray Realm convergence truly occurred, it would be impossible for a few enforcement officers like them to contend with it. This would be a catastrophic disaster for the 7 districts. Just as Han Meng was tracking the shadow centipedes, a massive black shadow suddenly enveloped him. Han Meng's eyes narrowed. The next moment, a mountain-sized bony claw descended from the sky. Thump! A giant skeletal eagle crashed down, smashing Han Meng's body into the black ground, sending dust and sand flying. Within the shattered earth, Han Meng's body was tightly wedged in the gaps of the bony claw. A massive skeletal head lowered to gaze at him, and a fierce aura, no weaker than that of the shadow centipede mother, surged forth. He had been targeted. Han Meng's heart immediately sank. Chapter 117, Pursuit. Han Meng was naturally aware of the legends of the Gray Realm. Human aura did not belong to this world. and prolonged travel in the Grey Realm would inevitably attract a large number of calamities. However, Han Meng had not expected these calamities to come so quickly. Only a few minutes had passed since he entered the Grey Realm. White bone claws deeply pierced the earth, grabbing Han Meng, along with the ground and rock layers beneath, forcefully tearing him out and rapidly ascending into the sky. His black trench coat was ripped into shreds. Han Meng forcefully shattered the claws with a single shot, escaping from the bone eagle's grasp. Fury flickered in the latter's hollow eyes, and its massive bone wings flapped, pursuing Han Meng at an astonishing speed. Even though Han Meng's speed was already considerable, this bone eagle's speed was almost twice his. In a breath, he was caught, and a hurricane swirled from the void, slamming Han Meng heavily down from the sky. Thud! Han Meng's figure fell from 100 meters high, creating dense cracks in the black earth. He violently spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his face as pale as paper. At the same time, the numerous shadow centipedes nearby suddenly stopped. They scanned the surrounding wilderness as if they had lost their target, beginning to circle aimlessly in place. Finally, the fifth-tier mother turned from the black tide, the hole in her head looking towards Han Meng. "This is bad," Han Meng muttered, seeing this from the corner of his eye, as he shakily got up from the ground. Although he didn't know what had happened, whatever had been attracting these shadow centipedes earlier must have disappeared. These shadow centipedes recovered from their blind pursuit and redirected their attention to him. With a shriek from the mother, hundreds of shadow centipedes surged towards Han Meng like a tsunami. The mother, like a winding small mountain, also rapidly approached. With the bone eagle above and the shadow tide below, all of Han Meng's escape routes were sealed. He was about to face the encirclement of two fifth-tier calamities. His tattered black trench coat swayed gently. Han Meng sighed deeply, silently lit a rolled cigarette, and held the gun grip with a solemn expression. Ellipsis. Above the black earth, a vivid scarlet figure moved slowly. This splash of red seemed to be the only color in this gray world. It was so glaring and conspicuous, as if it was declaring its danger to all surrounding creatures. He walked quietly for several minutes, and no calamity approached him. Suddenly, those hollow eyes trembled slightly, as if something was about to awaken, and he instinctively stopped. Where am I? Chen Ling felt his mind was a mess, as if he had just woken from a nightmare. His hollow pupils regained their luster, and he looked around blankly. What had just happened? Chen Ling's last memory was of setting the warehouse on fire. He vaguely remembered feasting in the sea of flames, but the specific process was unclear. The only vivid impression was the pain and suffocation of being burned to death by the flames. As for the battle with Shi Renji and others after the warehouse door was opened, and entering the Grey Realm, he had no recollection whatsoever. I advanced? Chen Ling immediately noticed the changes in his body, and his eyes lit up. Before, he was only half a step away from reaching the second tier. It seemed that the last feast had shortened some time for him, completely breaking through that barrier and stepping onto the second tier of the divine path. At the same time, he could also sense that he had gained a new skill. Chen Ling processed the information about this skill in his mind, and his expression gradually became strange. Compared to open black lens bracket, formless close black lens bracket, this skill seemed even more bizarre. This skill had two effects. One was similar to a sleight of hand, capable of conjuring non-existent things from nothing, or transforming an object into something with a similar appearance, like a trick. However, this trick only changed the appearance and had no additional effects. Even if he turned his clothes into snakes, these snakes wouldn't actually bite people. At most, they could only serve to intimidate. Judging by this effect alone, this skill was a simple illusion. But what truly surprised Chen Ling was its other effect. He could use something on himself to remotely swap any nearby object with a similar appearance. For example, he could use a banana to swap out the enemy's gun. In this way, the banana in Chen Ling's hand would become a gun, and the gun in the enemy's hand would become a banana. Of course, the banana here didn't have to be a real banana, it could be a stone, a piece of charcoal, or something else whose appearance had been altered by illusion. The simplest application of this effect led to a rule when Chen Ling and an enemy simultaneously pointed a gun and a banana at each other. No matter whose hands these two weapons were in, the one who was shot would definitely be the enemy. Of these two effects, the former was purely illusory, while the latter could conceal reality within the illusory. interchanging illusion and reality, making it difficult to distinguish between true and false. Sounds like some kind of trick for killing people, Chen Ling mused. Then let's call it open black lens bracket scarlet trick close black lens bracket. Having processed the new skill, Chen Ling's gaze began to carefully survey his surroundings. This place looked very much like the legendary Grey Realm, but he didn't know why he was here. However, Chu Muyan had told him that under the influence of the twisted divine path, he would enter a brief state of mental confusion every time he advanced. Perhaps his appearance here was also related to that state of mental confusion? Chen Ling walked aimlessly, deep in thought, when suddenly, a tremendous roar came from afar. Chen Ling turned his head to look. Large clouds of dust rose from the horizon, and several blurry shadows flickered within them, as if a great battle was underway. Is it a calamity, or a person? Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he still strode towards the commotion. Boom! The earth trembled, and a giant skeletal eagle soared from the swirling dust. At the same time, a blood-soaked figure streaked low across the sky, fleeing rapidly towards the edge of the horizon. Below, a dense black tide surged. A massive shadow centipede, like a small winding mountain, followed closely behind the bloody figure. Under the dual pursuit from land and sky, the bloody figure left no possibility of escape, constantly seeking breakthroughs amidst the overlapping bone eagle and shadow tide. But his speed was still slower than the bone eagle's. After dodging several times, he was slammed hard into the earth again by a claw. Han Meng? Chen Ling's heart jolted as he recognized the fleeting figure. Chapter 118, The Only Scarlet. As that blood-colored figure was smashed into the ground, an endless tide of shadows followed, with countless shadow centipedes swarming Han Meng, tearing at his body, almost piling up into a small mountain from a distance. The next moment, the shadow mountain exploded. A large number of centipedes were disintegrated into nothingness by successive gunshots. And a figure, like a cannonball, burst out from it, rushing towards the distant canyon with an unstoppable momentum. Just then, the massive shadow centipede mother blocked Han Meng's path. Han Meng's blood-stained face showed no significant emotional fluctuations, nor despair. He swept his hand behind his waist, and a short blade flew out, transforming into a cold gleam that rapidly shot towards the mother's head. Slender shadows gushed from the holes in the mother's head, instantly catching the shadow of the short blade, which immediately froze in midair. Han Meng's figure rapidly rushed towards the mother, lightly stroking the surface of the restrained short blade. Judgment, he said coldly. Boom! The short blade vibrated, and the power of judgment immediately disintegrated the surrounding shadows into nothingness, turning into a bolt of lightning that tore a bloody gash in the mother's torso. And a sharp screech immediately echoed through the sky. Han Meng raised his hand to summon, and the short blade automatically flew back into his palm. He took the opportunity to bypass the mother's obstruction, using his last bit of strength to rush towards the canyon. Just then, a fierce wind swept over him again. More than 10 bone spurs instantly pierced Han Meng's body. He grunted, his pace immediately slowing. He endured the intense pain, turned, and fired several shots at the rapidly approaching bone eagle, forcing it back into the air, while he stumbled backward. Under the combined assault of two fifth-tier calamities, Han Meng's body had long reached its limit. Even the most promising 5-striped enforcers in Aurora City couldn't have lasted this long. Unfortunately, his persistence and willpower had no audience. It was just a little bit more. Han Meng felt the surging aura within him, a bitter expression appearing in his eyes. Several pebbles rolled from his feet, falling into the one-line sky canyon. The pierced shadow centipede roared in anger, its massive body rapidly rushing over. The pale skeletal giant eagle circled in midair for a moment, then likewise swooped down, its sharp beak tearing through the air, emitting bursts of cracking sounds. The auras of the two fifth-tier calamities surged forth like an irresistible tidal wave. Han Meng took a deep breath, dragged his injured body, and leapt backward, his figure plummeting like a stubborn rock off a cliff. The canyon was extremely narrow, only about a meter wide. Looking up from the bottom, even the sky was just a sliver. The shadow centipede's massive body squeezed against the cliff edge for a long time, only managing to force half its head inside. As for the larger bone eagle, it could only peck its beak in. They angrily slammed against the cliff walls, causing the entire canyon to tremble slightly. Dense broken stones rolled down from the cliff top but did not completely collapse. Han Meng's body plummeted rapidly. The height of over 200 meters quickly distanced the two calamities from him. Just as he was about to crash into the bottom of the canyon, his last bit of spiritual energy was frantically consumed, and his body flew up several meters again before he finally fell to the ground. Cough, 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 cough. The bone spurs embedded deeper into his body. Han Meng lay weakly on the ground, coughing violently, scarlet blood continuously flowing from the corners of his mouth. He looked up at the sliver of sky above. The two calamities were still constantly crashing, but they could no longer harm him in the slightest. Han Meng's stamina and spiritual energy were completely depleted. If he hadn't observed this advantageous terrain beforehand and rushed here with all his might, he would probably have died under the siege of the two calamities by now. However, before he could sigh in relief, he saw the shadow centipede mother actively move aside. A moment later, the wave-like shadow centipedes began to crawl down from the cliff top, squeezing against the cliff walls to approach him. The mother's size was insufficient to pass through here, but these offspring could barely manage it. Seeing this, Han Meng gritted his teeth and struggled to his feet, dragging his riddled body, and moved deeper into the one-line sky. Could it be that he was truly going to die here today? Normally, even if hundreds of offspring gathered, Han Meng could slaughter them without batting an eye, but now his spiritual energy and stamina were exhausted, and he could barely use any skills. If he didn't die at the hands of the two fifth-tier calamities in the end, but was instead torn to shreds by these trash offspring, that would be too humiliating. Han Meng's blood-soaked hands supported him against the rock walls on both sides. As he moved forward with difficulty, the shadow centipedes were still very fast, and the distance between them rapidly closed. Just then, a large red figure slowly walked from the front of the narrow path. The moment he saw that splash of red, Han Meng froze. This was the first time he had seen a color other than black, white, and gray in this world. In this monotonous and oppressive world, that scarlet was so vibrant, demonic, and eerie. Thus, even from hundreds of meters away, Han Meng noticed him instantly. At this moment, the hairs on Han Meng's body stood on end. He abruptly stopped, his gaze fixed on the figure ahead, as if facing a formidable enemy. A person? This was the Grey Realm. It was impossible for humans to survive here for long, and to retain such vivid colors in the Grey Realm was inherently extremely bizarre. Regardless of whether that thing was humanoid, Han Meng didn't believe it was human. He narrowed his eyes, trying to see the person's face, but as the person flicked his sleeve, a black mask appeared out of thin air, like a magic trick, covering his face. It was an exaggerated smiling face, with two scarlet orbs for eyes and a red, crescent moon-like mouth curved into an exaggerated arc, almost reaching his ears. At first glance, it looked like a clown's smiling face, absurd and nonsensical, but the longer he gazed at the mask, the more sinister that smile seemed, with a hint of mockery in its playfulness, causing an involuntary sense of dread. This mask was something Chen Ling had made on a whim, modeled after the audience. Han Meng had saved his life, so Chen Ling naturally couldn't let him die before his eyes. However, this was the Grey Realm, and he absolutely could not appear as Enforcement Officer Chen Ling. Otherwise many things would be unexplainable. Therefore, he had to disguise himself. Although his open black lens bracket faceless close black lens bracket had already changed his original face, Han Meng's terrifying micro-expression observation ability still made him wary. To be safe, he chose to conjure a mask to cover his face. Under this double disguise, he didn't believe Han Meng could find any clues. The red opera robe swayed gently with his steps, and that black smiling face drew closer and closer to Han Meng. Han Meng's muscles tensed. In this oppressive gray world, the atmosphere seemed to congeal. Just then, from beneath the black mask, a low voice slowly sounded. "Move." Chapter 119. Are you going to arrest me? As soon as these two words were uttered, Han Meng was stunned. After all, Han Meng had initially assumed the other party was a disaster. But the moment the other party spoke, he hesitated. No, it was said that there were some rare highly intelligent creatures among disasters. But such disasters were of extremely high rank, at least above rank 7. However, since the other party could communicate, it meant he didn't have much hostility towards him. And in the Grey Realm, There were almost no disasters that harbored goodwill towards humans. So, Han Meng was still more inclined to believe the other party was human. Han Meng hesitated for a moment, about to make way for the other party, as the passage was too narrow for two people to walk side by side. Just then, a rustling sound came from behind. Han Meng looked back, only to see the shadow centipedes clinging to the rock wall simultaneously retreating, as if deliberately avoiding that touch of crimson. And in the blink of an eye, the black tide receded back onto the rock wall. In the silent canyon, only he and the figure in the red opera robe remained, standing face to face. That, "Make way," wasn't said to him. After all? Han Meng looked at the figure again, deep confusion and apprehension appearing in his eyes. He began to doubt his previous thought. How could a human force so many disasters to retreat with just a single sentence? Human or disaster? Han Meng could no longer tell. The red-clothed figure was undoubtedly the most mysterious and bizarre existence he had ever seen in his life. His mere presence represented endless riddles. At this moment, Chen Ling was also bewildered. His original intention was to have Han Meng make way so he could kill the pursuing chickens. But he hadn't expected that as soon as he spoke, the chickens would directly retreat. Why weren't they so polite in the 3rd district? Both fell into contemplation simultaneously. In this deathly silent atmosphere, Han Meng felt the silent, scrutinizing black mask become increasingly eerie. He opened his mouth to say something, but the scene before him gradually blurred, and with a sway of his body, he collapsed to the ground. Chen Ling was startled. Only then did he notice that trickling fresh blood was seeping from Han Meng's wounds. And at some unknown point, it had converged into a pool of gray blood at his feet. He had lost too much blood. Luckily you ran into me. Under the black mask, Chen Ling murmured to himself. You saved me once, and I'll save you once. Now, we're even. ... Shush. Shush. The sound of sand and gravel rubbing came from below him, as if something was being dragged on the ground. Han Meng's consciousness gradually returned. After a few brief seconds, he saw himself being dragged like a corpse across the black earth. His palms subconsciously gripped the ground, trying to leverage himself to turn over and draw his gun. But a sharp pain spread throughout his body. He let out a muffled groan, forced to stop his movement. At the same time, the figure dragging his body also stopped. Lead-gray clouds drifted across the sky, and the figure in the red opera robe calmly turned to look at him. You're awake. The low voice carried no emotion, and compared to the black smiling mask, it gave off an indescribable sense of eeriness. He released Han Meng's collar at the back of his neck, and the latter lay entirely on the ground. Han Meng's brows were tightly furrowed, and he struggled to prop himself up with his hands, trying to stand, when the low voice came again. I don't advise you to stand up right now. If your wounds reopen, you'll die. Han Meng's face was ashen. Only then did he notice that the dozen or so bone spurs that had been embedded in his body had been completely removed at some point. His trench coat had been torn into strips and simply bandaged over his wounds, stopping the bleeding. Given his original injuries, if left untreated, he would probably have bled to death. Han Meng looked up at him, his voice incredibly hoarse. Who are you? The black mask stared at him, not answering. After a long silence, Han Meng asked a second question. Why did you save me? After a moment, the red-clothed figure chuckled lightly, and said indifferently in a casual tone, it's rare to encounter such a promising talent on the judgment path. It would be a pity for him to die here. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +3 close black lens bracket. Chen Ling naturally couldn't tell the truth. When Han Meng asked that question, he admitted that some mischievous thoughts arose in his heart. No, it should be said that he was trying to make the plot more exciting. Director Chen's 8th rule of directing. Information asymmetry is one of the sources of plot satisfaction. When the audience views a conflict from an omniscient perspective that is not omniscient, they will naturally immerse themselves in it and anticipate subsequent developments. If the two characters in the plot who have information asymmetry already have dramatic conflict, the sense of anticipation will be even stronger. Han Meng's eyes narrowed slightly, and his gaze towards the red-clothed figure flickered with glimmers of doubt and speculation. You are a fusion person, he said. Chen Ling's eyes under the mask narrowed slightly. Oh? You have a human appearance and the ability to communicate, and you show no hostility towards me. So you shouldn't be a disaster living in the gray realm. But you can scare away those disasters with a single sentence. Which means there must be something about you that makes them wary. The only explanation is that you are a fusion person, and the disaster you fused with is of a very high rank. Han Meng was, after all, the law enforcement officer chief of the 3rd District. At this moment, he didn't seem like someone who had just escaped death, nor was he intimidated by Chen Ling's words. Instead, he meticulously analyzed everything that had just happened, rationally giving his judgment. Han Meng's deduction exceeded Chen Ling's expectations. But upon closer thought, it wasn't surprising. After all, he was Han Meng. When Chen Ling first arrived in this era and tried his best to hide the existence of the audience, Han Meng was the only one in the entire enforcer system who almost caught him. Chen Ling still clearly remembered the oppressive feeling brought by Han Meng's terrifying attention to detail and deductive abilities at that time. So, Chen Ling didn't bother to refute. He conjured a pistol out of thin air, like a magic trick, and pressed the muzzle against Han Meng's forehead. Under the black smiling mask, his voice was cold, without a hint of emotion. "Are you going to arrest me, enforcement officer?" Han Meng calmly met his gaze. A moment later, he spoke again. "I don't like my fate being in someone else's hands. So? Although you saved me, now, I hope you can put the gun down first." Before he finished speaking, the few wisps of mental energy Han Meng had recovered during his unconsciousness rapidly depleted. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes, and he suddenly made his move at such close range. Chapter 120, The Game. Lord of Weapons. As these two words left Han Meng's mouth, the gun in Chen Ling's hand suddenly flew out and was instantly reversed into Han Meng's grip like lightning. All of this happened so suddenly that Chen Ling was momentarily stunned. He looked at his empty palm, a hint of bewilderment flashing in his eyes beneath the mask. What kind of skill was this? It seems you aren't very familiar with the judgment path either. Han Meng held the gun in one hand, the muzzle pointing at the red-clothed man in front of him. His eyes slightly narrowed. The second-tier skill of the judgment path, Lord of Weapons, allows one to control all weapons within their vicinity. Trying to intimidate me with a gun was a mistake. Han Meng propped himself up with one hand on the ground, swaying as he stood. His face was still pale, but he was much better than before. He kept the gun pointed at Chen Ling and continued, "No matter which force you belong to, since you saved me, I won't make things difficult for you. Take off your mask, and I'll let you leave." Where the gun was pointed, the crimson smiling face on the dark mask stared straight at Han Meng, showing no intention of complying. "Let me leave?" the red-clothed man scoffed. "Are all you enforcement officers so arrogant? Do you want to take a closer look at what you're holding in your hand?" Han Meng frowned slightly, his gaze shifted down slightly, and he froze in place. Unbeknownst to him, the gun he was pointing at Chen Ling had, at some point, turned into a smooth banana. At the same time, the red-clothed man unhurriedly raised his other hand and, using Han Meng's gun, re-pressed it against his glabella. "Lord of Weapons? Is that very impressive?" Open black lens bracket audience expectation +5 close black lens bracket. The dark mask was almost pressed against Han Meng's face, the exaggerated crimson smile seeming to mock him wantonly. He dropped the playfulness from his tone and spoke coldly, filled with killing intent. "This will be your last provocation towards me. Do not try to test my patience, enforcement officer." As his words fell, he reinserted the gun in his hand back into Han Meng's waistband. Yes, he gave the gun back to Han Meng. A rare look of solemnity appeared in Han Meng's eyes. Chen Ling's actions, in his view, were undoubtedly a display of power. "Even if I give you back the gun, what can you do?" This action completely dispelled Han Meng's idea of making a move. In fact, the reason Han Meng used Lord of Weapons to seize the gun was partly to regain the initiative, and partly to test the red-clothed man's strength. However, the ability the other party displayed completely exceeded Han Meng's understanding. Among the few divine paths Han Meng knew of, there shouldn't be any with such a bizarre skill. This also confirmed his earlier guess about him being a fusion person. The red-clothed man had been angered by his probing. If he truly made another move, the outcome would be hard to predict. In this situation, maintaining the current brief peace and secretly looking for clues was the best solution. "Is this the ability of your calamity?" Han Meng was still not intimidated by Chen Ling, and as if nothing had happened, He calmly asked. To be able to fuse with such a powerful calamity without your mental well-being affected. And without obvious signs of physical mutation. How did you do it? You're talking too much. Enforcement officer, Chen Ling said faintly. Seeing this, Han Meng wisely shut his mouth. Chen Ling naturally wouldn't allow Han Meng to probe him. He shut him down with a single sentence. Then brushed the wide sleeves of his opera robe and turned to walk towards the end of the Black Land, leaving only a mysterious silhouette behind him. Han Meng narrowed his eyes, watching him for a moment, then also stepped forward to follow. What are you following me for? Chen Ling tilted his head, his cold voice emanating from beneath the dark mask. Humans walking in the gray realm will attract calamity attacks. And you are the only color here. Only by following you will they not approach. Han Meng replied expressionlessly. Since I survived, there's no need to rush to leave and die. Humans would be attacked in the gray realm? Is that true? Chen Ling secretly noted it down. Indeed, since he entered the gray realm, no calamity had approached him. Of course, Chen Ling would not believe Han Meng's reason. Given Han Meng's personality, it was impossible for him to rely on others to survive. He was following him, surely still wanting to figure out his identity. Another game of acting and scheming. Chen Ling sighed inwardly. He had only intended to save Han Meng on a whim, but he hadn't expected so much trouble afterwards. Suit yourself, Chen Ling replied indifferently. Perhaps because of that last sentence, Han Meng didn't say a word this time, just quietly walked behind him to his side, and the atmosphere suddenly became a bit stiff. A few minutes later, Chen Ling finally couldn't help but slowly open his mouth. What do you think of this place? Where? Chen Ling raised his hand and pointed to the ground. The gray realm? Han Meng's gaze swept around, and after a moment of contemplation, he said, it's very monotonous, very oppressive, and very dangerous. It is a bit oppressive, but after staying for a long time, it's not bad. Chen Ling nodded slightly, the dark mask lifting slightly, and two crimson eyes gazing at the lead gray clouds in the sky. Compared to your Aurora domain? Han Meng's heart stirred. It sounded like this red-clothed man seemed to have stayed in the gray realm for many years. But then again, the living conditions of fusion persons were difficult, they were not tolerated by the human realm. So it was normal for them to be in the gray realm often. The Aurora domain? A hint of complexity flashed in Han Meng's eyes. Then the gray realm is indeed better. Oh? Although calamities are dangerous, they are still somewhat inferior compared to human hearts. That doesn't sound like something an enforcement officer should say. Enforcement officer, to me, is a responsibility, not a position. Han Meng shook his head. I say what I want, they cannot restrain me. The dark mask turned around and looked at him deeply. It sounds like you're not satisfied with the enforcer system. Perhaps. Why not choose to leave? Leave? Go where? Han Meng looked at him. His eyes slightly narrowed. Other realms are too far. And they might not be better than the Aurora domain. Do you mean I should join malicious organizations like the Zhongtian sect or the Twilight Society? Good and evil, who can decide? Chen Ling calmly replied. Do you think that what the enforcement officer represents is good? Han Meng quietly looked at Chen Ling's back, and after a long moment, he slowly said, it seems you are from the Twilight Society. Beneath the dark mask, Chen Ling's pupils slightly contracted. He instantly controlled his body, not letting his footsteps falter in the slightest, and continued to walk forward unhurriedly. What makes you say that?